By mid-afternoon, Mira overheard whispers near the break area. Two employees were talking in hushed voices. Did you hear? The CEO is personally looking into the report tampering. So what? No one will suspect her. She's been here for years. Myra's pulse quickened. Her? She turned the corner just in time to see Ms. Choy handing a file to a man in IT.
Ms. Choy.
Mira had suspected her before, but now she had proof. Mira clenched her fists. So you were the one trying to ruin me. The confrontation. That evening, Guman called Mira into his office. He looked at her with his usual unreadable expression. Did you find anything? Mira didn't hesitate.
Yes.
She placed a copy of the altered report on his desk, along with the marked one she had saved. Miss Choy is behind it. She's been changing my data before it reaches you. Guman's fingers tapped against the desk. Are you sure? 100%, Mira said firmly. Silence. Then, without warning, Guman pressed a button on his intercom. Call Miss Choy to my office.
Now?
Myra's heart pounded. She had expected him to handle it quietly, but instead, he was making his move immediately. A few minutes later, Ms. Choy entered, her usual composed expression in place. You called for me, sir? Guman leaned back in his chair, studying her. Then, in a cold, clipped tone, he asked, Why did you tamper with Myra's report? The room went silent. Ms. Choy's face paled for just a second before she quickly composed herself. Sir, I don't know what you're talking about. Mira stepped forward. Then why did I find this? She placed both reports in front of Ms. Choy. Guman watched the older woman closely. Ms. Choy's lips pressed together. Then, with a small scoff, she crossed her arms. I don't know what you're trying to prove, in turn, but you're overstepping. Stop. Guman's voice was sharp.
Cold.
Ms. Choy immediately froze. He leaned forward slightly, his dark eyes locked onto her. I don't like being lied to. The tension in the room thickened. Ms. Choy swallowed hard, her confidence wavering. Guman picked up the files and tossed them back onto his desk. You've worked here for years. I trusted you. Yet, you tried to sabotage someone I personally allowed into this company. Myra's breath caught. Did he just admit that he personally backed her position? Ms. Choy lowered her head, but it was too late. Guman sighed. Leave. Her eyes widened. Sir, you're fired.
Ms. Choy gasped.
Mira expected her to argue, but instead, Ms. Choy clenched her fists, turned on her heel, and stormed out. A shift in the air. Once the door shut, Mira exhaled. It was over. Guman glanced at her. You handled that well. Mira met his gaze. I wasn't going to let her ruin my name. A pause. Then, something unexpected. A small, almost imperceptible smirk on Guman's lips. Good, he murmured. Let's see how you handle bigger challenges. Mira stared at him. For the first time, she realized this wasn't just about an internship anymore. Guman was testing her. And something told her this was only the beginning. Mira thought that after exposing Ms. Choy, things would settle down. She was wrong. The atmosphere in the office had changed. Some employees now looked at her with quiet respect, while others whispered behind her back. But the real shift? Guman's behavior. After Ms. Choy's dismissal, he became even more unpredictable. He would watch her closely during meetings, give her more responsibilities, and yet, he remained as cold and unreadable as ever. Mira wasn't sure if she was being rewarded or tested again. The silent threats. A week later, Mira returned from a lunch break to find a note on her desk. You should have stayed quiet. Her fingers tightened around the paper. Someone in the company wasn't happy with what she had done. She looked around, trying to spot anyone suspicious, but everyone acted normal. Too normal. Mira took a deep breath. I won't be intimidated. Instead of hiding the note, she walked straight to Guman's office and placed it on his desk. He glanced at it, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he picked it up and read it. Interesting, he muttered. That's all you have to say? Mira asked, crossing her arms. Guman leaned back in his chair, his sharp eyes locking onto hers. Did you expect me to panic? Mira scowled.
No.
But someone is clearly upset that Ms. Choy was exposed, and they want me gone. Gumin was silent for a moment. Then, to her surprise, he smirked. So you finally understand. Understand what? He stood up, walking around his desk until he was standing directly in front of her. That you've stepped into something bigger than just an internship. Mira swallowed. She refused to back down. I don't care how big it is. I won't be bullied out of here. Gumin's eyes flickered with something unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, he reached into his desk and handed her a file. If you want to stay, he said, I have another task for you. But this time, the stakes are higher. Mira took the file, her heartbeat quickening. What kind of task? Gumin's smirk deepened. Let's just say it's a game only the strong can survive. Mira flipped open the file, and when she saw what was inside, her breath caught. This wasn't just a test. This was a war. Mira barely had time to process the contents of the file before Gumin spoke again. You have 1 week to complete this task, he said, his voice calm but firm. Don't disappoint me. Mira stared at him. A week? But this is way beyond an intern's job. Inside the file was a high-stakes proposal for an important client. A deal that could bring in millions for the company. Gumin simply leaned back against his desk, watching her. You said you weren't a coward, didn't you? Myra's jaw tightened. He was pushing her again, testing her limits. She grabbed the file.
Fine.
I'll do it. A flicker of something, approval, crossed his face, but it disappeared just as quickly.
Good.
Now go. Word spread fast. By the next morning, everyone in the office was talking about it. Did you hear? The CEO assigned the intern a major project. What? That's impossible. Even senior employees don't get deals like that. Who is she to get such special treatment? Mira ignored the whispers, focusing on her work. She didn't have time to care about office gossip. But there was one reaction she hadn't expected: jealousy. Some employees who had been neutral before now looked at her with resentment. She even caught Mr. Kong staring at her with a deep frown. And then there was Ms. Choi's replacement, Mr. Lee. A sharp-eyed man who had worked in the company for years. He didn't speak to Mira much, but now, he suddenly seemed interested in everything she did. A tense meeting. 3 days into her project, Mira was called to a meeting with Gumin and the board of directors. When she arrived, she could feel the tension in the room. One of the older directors adjusted his glasses. CEO Gu, is it true that you placed an intern in charge of this proposal? Gumin was completely unfazed.
Yes.
Murmurs broke out. Another director shook his head. This is reckless. We can't afford mistakes. Mira clenched her fists. They don't even want to hear what I have to say. But before she could defend herself, Gumin did something completely unexpected. He leaned forward and said, if she fails, you can blame me. Silence. Myra's breath hitched. Did he just put his own reputation on the line for her? Even the directors looked surprised. One of them cleared his throat. You must have great faith in this intern. Gumin's gaze flickered to Mira. She earned it. Mira felt her chest tighten. This wasn't just about the project anymore. This was Gumin making a statement. And now, the entire company was watching to see if she would rise to the challenge or crash under the pressure.